Hello, welcome to Coffee with Kathleen. Today's cup, I guess, is my San Francisco State mom cup, which some of my employees got me once upon a time. I do not have a child that went to San Francisco State, not an actual child anyway. But, you know, this cup is large and I needed kind of a lot of coffee today, as it turns out. Are you having one of those days too, where maybe you need a little extra coffee? Now's a great time to have it while we hang out. And for this episode, what I did was I asked a bunch of folks at Women in Auto Care and at a couple of other organizations that I belong to, what they might want to hear me talk about. And, you know, I guess maybe not surprisingly, because I've done a lot of conversations about challenges and, business challenges, corporate challenges, other kinds of issues. People wanted me to talk not just about difficulty in general, which I've done on a previous episode, but they wanted me to instead talk about how to handle difficult people. Imagine that. So it's kind of if you've not seen my other episode on handling life's difficulties, I do recommend that. I think it's kind of a companion to this one because, of course, one of life's difficulties are, relationships with other people. And so that makes a ton of sense. And some of the things that I talked about there, I won't talk about today and vice versa. So these two things can go together. But before we get started and really dig into the topic, why don't we set a mood? And I think that for me, today's mood is grounded, courageous, unflinching, and curious. What do we think about that? Do we think those are good? Why don't you take just a couple of seconds and set your own intention? It doesn't just have to be for watching this podcast. Maybe your intention is just to get to the bottom, but it could be your intention for today in general. And I think whenever we approach something with a particular intention, even if we're not able to fully realize it, it just changes the whole tenor of what we're about to experience. We come into it a little bit more aware, paying a little bit better attention, a little bit more mindful, because then our brain starts to do this little thing where it tries to figure out whether the intention's manifesting or not. And giving that activity or that task to our brain actually allows us to tune in just a little bit better. That's my first tip. And that's not a bad tip for dealing with difficult people. But before I start to talk about difficult people, let's define what the heck a difficult person even is. So what I'm not going to talk about today specifically is abusive people. And I think there's a big difference between a difficult person and an abusive person. A difficult person is just somebody that you're not in relationship with in a way that feels productive. I mean, very simply, that there's some difficulty in there. It causes you some headache, heartache, problem, but it's not terminal. It's not, so talking about this in a work context, it's not somebody that's sexually harassing you. It's not somebody that is bullying you. It is not somebody that is picking on you for one of your personal characteristics. It's just somebody with whom you don't agree. It's somebody who's not responding to you, maybe at all or in the right way. It's somebody that you don't particularly enjoy working with or being around because of the various ways in which, they show up or they land on you. That's it. That's what we're talking about today. So given that we've now clarified difficult versus abusive, very important, because abuse should never be tolerated. It shouldn't be worked with. Maybe, we need to work with the emotions that come from it, but this is not a therapy session per se, right? This is just about dealing with difficult people. Okay. So in that sense, think about this first phase as a mirror, because what I'm about to tell you might blow your mind, but you are somebody else's difficult person. And maybe you're even the difficult person of the person you find difficult. Did that make sense? I think that made sense. So just think about that for a minute. Who are you difficult for? Who in your life finds you difficult? And then, maybe get out a pen and a notepad, and maybe we're going to spend some time making a little bit of a personal inventory, or you can just jot yourself a note about making this inventory later once you're done with Coffee with Kathleen. It's really, really helpful to make an inventory about how you might be somebody else's difficulty and the ways in which you might be difficult. So for me, what are the ways in which I might be difficult? Well, I take up a lot of space. I have a big personality. That doesn't always leave room for somebody else. I work all the time on being a better active listener, but am I always actively listening to everyone all the time? No. I am a leader at work. That means there are people who work for me, and I'm in a position of power. That can create difficulty because there are power dynamics that come into play, and I don't always act or react in a way that someone wants me to. What I've also discovered as part of the work that I've done on myself, that actually sometimes it's my best self manifested in the exact right way. I'm showing up 100% the way that I want to show up. That is sometimes difficult for people, for whatever reason they might have about that, because I'm making things happen and they don't want them to happen that way, or they wanted to be the one, that got on stage and had something to say, or they wanted someone else to be delivering X, Y, or Z message, or they simply want something that I'm not in a capacity to offer them, even though what I'm offering is very genuine, heartfelt, awesome. So even in our most awesome manifestations, we can be a problem for someone else, and vice versa. I'm not saying your difficult person is super mega awesome and that you're just sitting in jealousy, but I am saying that we're all difficult for somebody else, and really understanding how we might be difficult, know ourselves first, allows us to unravel what's going on with the other person just a little bit. Secondly, let's think about where we have resistance. So when we're thinking about this difficult person and the reasons why they're difficult, as opposed to the reasons why we're difficult, where do we feel resistance? How do we actively resist this person? That is where the real difficulty lies. And I said this probably before, I'll say it again. Sometimes the way in which we resist something actually ends up being more difficult for us than the problem to begin with. So understanding how that plays out can be important. Let's just say, for grins, for instance, that your difficult person is your boss. They're difficult because there's a power dynamic. They're difficult because they're not supporting you in ways that you want to be supported, because you don't like the way that they're communicating things to you. Whatever the case may be, that there's something going on there and you want to pull that apart. And so then let's just say that your boss being difficult causes you to behave in ways that are maybe passive aggressive, because you can't be in your boss's face all the time. That wouldn't be a good dynamic. That doesn't respect the power dynamic. And so you're doing little subtle things that maybe undermine what's going on. And in those resistances, you're going to find where the difficulty is, exactly what it is that they do and exactly how it is that you're reacting. And that's the problem. The problem is them plus you, not just them. Okay. So now that we kind of understand that, a quote from none other than the Buddha: "You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger." Again, you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. And similarly, you will not be punished for finding someone difficult, but you will be punished by the ways in which you react to finding them difficult, whether that's anger or something else. So now that we are kind of in this spot, let's just choose a difficult person and kind of work through this around them. Let's just pick one, right? We probably all have more than one, but let's just pick one. Let's silently name them. Or if you're alone, you can name them out loud. I don't mind. I'm not listening. And now that we've got this difficult person in mind, let's tease out what specifically makes them difficult for you. How do you feel in your mind, in your heart, in your body when you're around or engaging with this person, or when their difficulty comes up? Also, not everybody we find difficult is difficult 100% of the time. Sometimes we're just not sure how they're going to act in a given situation. They'll be lovely for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden on a random Wednesday, they're not lovely anymore, and now they're a difficult person. So let's think about when specifically this person is difficult. What are the circumstances? What do those look like? And then how does that feel for us in all the various ways that we're able to feel that difficulty? And then let's acknowledge that at least some part of this difficulty, and again, this is because we're talking about difficult people and not abusive people, that at least some part of this difficulty is because we're not fully expressed around the way this person makes us feel. And that when this person is giving us a difficulty, we're not saying, you're being difficult, this is tough for me, and they're understanding that from us. Okay. Mama Rod Owens, one of my faves, he says, you don't have to agree with someone to love them. So one of the opportunities that we really have is to separate the person and the difficulty the person presents, so that we can start to be in relationship with the person, and we can start to tackle the difficulty, ideally together. So the feeling of discomfort is your teacher, and it is not your enemy. And so this discomfort that this difficulty presents you is also a learning opportunity. So avoiding discomfort, suppressing your discomfort, and or going overboard to try to please this difficult person, all of those strategies are going to backfire. Ultimately, they're going to backfire, and they may even be personally damaging to you. So really, the invitation being offered to us by the difficult person is for us to grow and expand, to step outside of our comfort zone, to deal with them in a different way, to become more fully expressed and more fully honest as human beings, and to allow some of these differences and difficulties to, if not completely melt away, become smoother and more resolved. And let's understand too that difficulty isn't just what a person does. It can also be what a person doesn't do. Is there something that they're holding back from you? Are they holding back from you a certain affection? Are they holding back from you a certain way that they deal with most people, but they're not offering that to you? I just had a difficult person situation come up today. This person who is perfectly warm and lovely to many other people, even those on my team, is cold as heck to me. For some reason, my interpretation of this is he doesn't like me. He doesn't like me, and he's withholding, therefore, his warmest expression of self as a way of letting me know that. And of course, I'm not fully expressed around this because I haven't gone to him and said, hey, I feel like you don't like me. Instead, we're both being polite and we're dancing around the central issue. And therein lies the difficulty. The difficulty lies in the unspoken thing. Now, I'm not so sure if I were to say this to this person that they would A, admit it, or B, that we would make any progress in that way, but it's something that we could think about or we could look at. And when you are holding back, just as I described that I am in this particular relationship, one thing that's really helpful to think about is, what is the cost of that silence? Is it costing you anything not to be expressed or not to say anything? Is this a big enough deal? Do you need to address it? Tara Brock says, the boundary to what we can accept is the boundary to our freedom. So think about the difficulties that you're going through with this person that you're holding in mind right now. Is it something that you can accept? And if it isn't, how do we then step into fixing it? So let's try the 4 R's framework. First R is recognizing. Let's name what the difficulties are. I know this story. It's playing out all the time. And then let's look for specific examples of this story happening. What we don't want to do is we don't want to unconsciously create patterns that cause this story to happen. Sometimes when we've decided we don't like somebody, that they're not one of our people, that this person is just this way, then we almost create scenarios for this person to show up that way to validate this negative feeling that we have about them and to say, see, it's like we want them to fail over and over and over again because we have a negative impression. And, you know, universe forbid that we change the narrative around that in any way, because we've already decided this isn't one of our people. We don't like them. They're difficult, etc. So what we want to do is we want to say, what are the specific issues? What are the specific problems? When are those likely to occur? How do we feel? What else is happening? And that's going to start to lead us to the answer of what we could do about it. The second R, so we've recognized the problem, we've been able to describe it, and we've recognized the problem for what it is, and we've not tried to exaggerate it or cause it to reoccur. Okay, that's one. Two, second R is refrain. So don't pick up the rope. If you don't pick up the rope, nobody's going to jump rope, right? So it takes two people to twirl the end of that rope so a third person can jump. Just don't pick it up. Let the story spin. Don't jump into it. And remember that a lot of times, even if it's about you, like this person who doesn't like me very much, even if that's about me, it's also not really about me. Just like you having difficulty with this person is both about them, but also not about them. It's about how you're receiving them. And even if additional people find them difficult and you're able to commiserate, and again, probably magnify the problem by doing all that commiserating, but I digress. This person's difficulty is the way that they land on you specifically. So you own part of that. So it's both about the other person and not about the other person. And it's both about you and also not about you. So Viktor Frankl says between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power. So first R is recognizing, second R is refraining, third R is relaxing. And what I mean by relaxing is just letting things stretch out a bit, to breathe, to soften, to ground yourself, to create some space between what this person just did that was freaking annoying and your response to that thing. Just create room. So recognizing, refraining, relaxing. Relaxing also means just accepting it. So if this person is absolutely aggravating, okay, how can I work with that? How can I accept that, you know, sometimes this person's going to be all wound up and they're going to say and do things that I don't like? How can I let that exist and just relax into it? I can notice, ooh, I'm starting to get hooked. I'm starting to have these feelings. And I can also just let it pass me by. Part of that, again, is being connected to myself, recognizing what's happening in my body when this person does these things. Then lastly, resolving. So when I'm resolving, I'm doing muscle repetitions for my emotional muscles. And that's a lifelong practice. It's not going to come to you overnight, but every moment and every new interaction is a new chance for that. Eckhart Tolle said, awareness is the greatest agent for change. And so that's what's happening in the resolution phase. It doesn't necessarily mean that I've solved the difficult person problem and they're never again going to be difficult or problematic for me. But what I have done is I have created a practice around it that allows me to work with the difficulty in a different way. And I might start to see things bust wide open as a result. I would say after the 4 R's practice, which could be a meditative practice, but doesn't have to be, let's think about leading with vulnerability with this person. So you get to set the table. You get to decide what type of conversation you'll have. Invite them then to your imaginary dinner party. Let them know what you're going to be talking about, how you want to step into it, what your best intentions are for that relationship, and invite them in. So I once had a difficulty with someone I worked with, and she was pretty tough. She was a really tough customer, and she would often say or do things that I thought were particularly harsh. On the flip side, she seemed particularly vulnerable to when anybody else might say anything even remotely critical of her, which I at the time interpreted as intensely hypocritical. Her not understanding what she was putting forward and definitely not able to receive it back. What I decided to do was to invite her in. I wanted to have a relationship with her. I asked her how we could work on that. And back in these days, we all worked in person. And so every day at lunchtime, we went on a walk for 20 minutes. And we talked and we worked through issues. And we had to do that for probably 4 or 5 solid weeks before we could look at each other and say that we had worked through our difficulty. So rather than avoiding and moving away from it, we leaned into it. And I'm so grateful that she was willing to do that as well. What I was able to do, instead of saying, you give it, but you can't take it, I actually didn't want her to take it. I wanted her to be easier on me. So what I was able to do was invite her in to a space where we were both gentle with each other, because that's clearly what she wanted. And that's what I wanted also. And that was the thing that we co-created together, because a relationship is co-created between two people. It's not to say that she never popped off with a harsh comment ever again, or that I probably didn't either. But it's just to say we understood each other so much better, and we were so much more conscious about the way in which we wanted to do that. And what might shift you in all of your relationships if you were more honest, but also more kind at the same time, both things together. Being more honest doesn't mean being meaner or more confrontational or edgier or any of that. Being more honest can be the biggest kindness that you could offer, especially if you're coupling that with an invitation for someone to walk in further. And not everybody's going to respond to your invitation, by the way. Difficult people are going to be difficult. They're not always going to step into that invitation. Maybe they don't want it. They don't have time for it. They don't understand it. And that's okay, because ultimately this is more about you than it is about them. This is how you feel at the end of the day and how you're able to grapple with this. Keep in mind too, that for you and for everyone else, there's a big gap between intent and impact. And that I'm sure you can reference a time in your own life where you had the best of intentions, and the impact was that you ended up hurting somebody's feelings, saying something obnoxious, saying something derogatory. You didn't mean to, you didn't know, that wasn't your intention. It came out wrong. It was received wrong, whatever. And that this difficult person that you're talking about might also have an intent and impact gap. And so really understanding where people are coming from more so helps you to bridge that gap and to develop your own compassion muscle. And when you're dealing with this person, hold your own intentions very close to the surface, because that person's going to be able to read your intention. If over time you're disgusted with this person and your intention is for them to always fail and to always meet that old narrative that you have in your head about them, that's exactly what's going to happen, because their mirror neurons are firing. They can read your intention, even if not consciously. And that's what's going to happen in the relationship between the two of you. Hold your intentions close. Try to see their own intentions. Try to assume the best and work from that basis. Remember that compassion means compassion for yourself, but also for the other person, and that there may be two truths. I can't even say that. Two truths at play. Okay. And then the best conversations don't start in a room with another person. The best conversations start with you. So before your next hard conversation, what's your goal? How do you want to feel afterwards? What do you want to invite? What do you want to create? It's not about demand. It's about setting the stage for success to happen if success is possible in that conversation. This might not all get resolved with one conversation, no matter how much you prepared for it or how difficult it was for you to step into it. So be prepared to step into it over and over and over again. Brene Brown said, clear is kind and unclear is unkind. Clear is kind and unclear is unkind. So speak with clarity, speak your truth. And remember, you're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to be real, to be whole, to grow, to have what I call a whole ass life. That is what you're here to do. And so in that process, it's not always going to be easy, and everyone is not always going to be easy for you. But you can still bring ease into your interactions with difficult people. Cheers.